Two men walk into the same five-star hotel lobby. The first one arrives in a rented Lamborghini. He's wearing head-to-toe Gucci. The logo belt, the monogram jacket, the GG sneakers. He's loud. He's filming himself. He demands the manager by name and complains that his suite isn't ready, even though he showed up 2 hours early. The second man arrives in a black town car. He's wearing a plain grey t-shirt, dark trousers, clean white sneakers. No logos, no entourage. He nods quietly at the front desk staff. He knows their names. They know his. His suite has been ready since yesterday. One of these men is carrying $40,000 in credit card debt. The other one is worth $4 billion. You probably already know which is which, but here's what the concierge at one of the world's most exclusive hotels told us, and it will completely change how you read a room for the rest of your life. The loudest people in the room there is a term that gets used quietly among five-star hotel staff, luxury yacht crews and private aviation attendants. They don't say it out loud, at least not in front of guests, but behind closed doors among themselves, they use it constantly. Fake rich. After years of serving the ultra-wealthy, these professionals develop an almost supernatural ability to spot the difference between someone who has real generational money and someone who is simply performing wealth for an audience, usually for social media, sometimes for themselves, and the signals, once you know them, are impossible to unsee. Luxury concierges who work at properties like the Hotel de Paris in Monaco or the Burj Al Arab in Dubai have described the same pattern over and over again. The guests who cause the most trouble, demand the most attention, complain the loudest, and tip the worst are almost never the wealthiest people in the building. In fact, the opposite is almost always true. A former senior concierge with over 15 years of experience at a flagship European luxury hotel explained it this way. The clients who arrived with the most visible logos, the most dramatic entrances, and the most unreasonable demands, those were invariably the clients whose credit cards were declined most often. They needed the attention because the luxury itself was the point. They were buying the status signal, not the experience. True high-net-worth individuals, the concierge explained, almost never needed to perform anything. They already knew they were wealthy. They didn't need the room to know it too. Subscribe for more if you find this fascinating. Hit subscribe right now, because what we're about to reveal next is the real reason old money and new money behave so differently. And it's something most people never figure out. The science of signaling. There's actually a documented economic concept behind this behavior. It's called conspicuous consumption, a term coined by sociologist Thorstein Veblen back in 1899. The idea is simple. People buy expensive, visible goods not for the utility of the goods themselves, but to signal their social status to others. For someone who grew up without money and recently acquired it, the signal matters enormously. The logo is the proof. The louder, the better. It says, look how far I've come. Look what I can afford. But for someone born into generational wealth, or who built genuine long-term wealth over decades, there is simply nothing left to prove. The signal was never the point. The life was always the point. This is why Warren Buffett still lives in the same house in Omaha, Nebraska, that he bought in 1958 for $31,500. It's why Bernard Arnault, the man who literally owns Louis Vuitton, is rarely photographed in Louis Vuitton. It's why the truly wealthy tend to dress in quiet luxury, clean, perfectly tailored basics in neutral tones, nothing screaming for your attention. They have made peace with their wealth in a way that the newly arrived, the over-leveraged and the appearance-obsessed simply haven't. What the concierge sees, let's go back to the hotel lobby, because this is where it gets genuinely revealing. Luxury hospitality professionals describe a very consistent portrait of what real wealth actually looks like up close. Real wealth is almost always polite. Not performatively polite, not polite in a way that expects gratitude, just naturally, quietly considerate. They understand that the staff around them are professionals doing a job, and they treat them accordingly. They make requests, not demands. They say thank you and mean it. Real wealth values privacy above almost everything else. The last thing a genuine billionaire wants is attention. They don't want to be photographed. They don't want their booking to be talked about. They often travel under different names. They request corner tables in restaurants specifically, because corner tables face the room rather than being faced by the room. They want to observe, not be observed. Real wealth is patient. When you have genuine financial security, you are not constantly performing urgency. The person who melts down because their champagne took 4 minutes longer than expected is almost always the person for whom the champagne is a stretch. The billionaire simply picks up his phone and waits. The experience is not going anywhere. Real wealth tips quietly and generously. Not in a showy way, not in a way that draws attention or expects a reaction. The envelope at the end of the stay, the quiet word with the manager about a staff member who was exceptional. This is how real wealth expresses appreciation, and real wealth almost never mentions money. This is perhaps the most striking observation from everyone who works at the highest levels of the luxury industry. People who have very little talk about money constantly. People who have an enormous amount almost never bring it up. The debt beneath the diamonds here is something the luxury industry doesn't advertise but absolutely knows. A significant percentage of the people staying in the most expensive hotel suites, chartering the most visible yachts, wearing the most recognizable designer labels, are doing it on borrowed money. Buy now, pay later services have transformed the entry point into perceived luxury. Designer handbags are being purchased on installment plans. Watches are being financed. Rental services exist specifically so that someone can carry a Birkin bag for a weekend without owning it. The infrastructure of fake wealth has never been more sophisticated, more accessible, or more convincing, and social media has made the incentive to perform wealth more powerful than ever before. Every image of a private jet staircase, every restaurant where the food arrives looking like architecture, every hotel view posted to Instagram. These are investments in a personal brand built entirely on the appearance of financial success. Meanwhile, the people on the actual private jets, the owned ones, not the chartered for content ones, are usually posting nothing at all. The quiet signals of real wealth. Once you start looking for them, the markers of genuine financial success are remarkably consistent. The watch is understated or not present at all. When a watch does appear, it is often vintage, often plain dialed, often something that only another watch person would recognize as exceptional. The clothes are fitted perfectly, in natural fabrics, in quiet colors. There are no visible logos. The quality is apparent only to someone who knows fabric and tailoring, which is exactly the point. The car, when there is one, is clean, current, and unremarkable. Not because they can't afford something dramatic, but because they have no interest in being noticed. The conversation is curious and engaged rather than performative. People with real wealth tend to ask more questions than they answer. They are genuinely interested in others because they stopped needing to be interesting themselves a long time ago. And the phone. This is the one that concierges notice most reliably. Fake wealth uses the phone constantly in public, to photograph, to post, to signal, to perform. Real wealth keeps the phone in a pocket and pays attention to the room. The richest person in the room is almost always the quietest one. Not because wealth teaches people to be quiet, but because people who are genuinely secure, financially, emotionally, in every way that matters, simply have nothing left to prove. The logo on the outside is always an advertisement for the anxiety on the inside. True wealth doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. If this changed how you see the world around you, share it with one person who needs to hear it, and subscribe. Because we dig into the hidden mechanics of money, power, and status every single week. Money, power, and status every single week.